Hello, Bobcats. It's Mrs. Wilhite here. We're still in Chapter 10. We're looking at Lesson 10 today. It is dividing a whole number by a fraction. It is a 5th grade standard. We have to learn it in 5th grade to be ready for 6th grade and all the grades that are coming your way. I'm hoping at the end of the lesson you'll be able to divide a whole number by that fraction. The main idea, why are we spending time on this? Well, I want you to be able to divide or share equally, right? Sometimes we're able to divide whole numbers by whole numbers, like 12 divided into 2 equal groups, 6 in this pile and 6 in that pile. But sometimes we're going to have to divide, and we're starting with that whole number of 12, but it's not going to be 2 equal groups. Instead, we'll have to divide it by a fraction when you're cooking and doing different things. So I'm hoping that at the end of today's lesson, you'll be able to use this skill of dividing a whole number by a fraction in all kinds of ways. All right, what do you remember or what do you already know about simplifying fractions? Because that's going to help you today. If we were given the fraction 8/12 or 8 pieces out of 12, can we simplify that fraction? Yeah. We can go ahead and list those factors, all the numbers that we can use to multiply to get that product of 8. We can list the factors of 12. We have 2 times 6, all the numbers that we can multiply to get 12. Once we have those, we can find the greatest common factor. The biggest factor that they share is 8. Then we can go ahead and divide by 4. Because the biggest one they share is 4, And so once we divide by 4, then we know the simplified fraction is 2/3. Or 2/3 is equal or equivalent to 8/12. So today, when we're working on dividing a whole number by a fraction, you got to remember these steps that we've learned in simplifying. Finding that GCF. And then after you find that greatest common factor, go ahead and divide and find that equivalent fraction. So from my experience, I know how to simplify, and that's going to help me today in this lesson. All right, Bobcats, you can go ahead and pause this video and write down these steps if you need to. But the first thing you're going to want to do today is you're going to want to change that whole number into a fraction. So if they give you the whole number 5, go ahead and put a 1 underneath it. Make it a fraction. After you create a fraction, move on to step 2. Step 2 is the reciprocal. Notice that I put right. It is the number or fraction on the right that we will do the reciprocal to. So step 1, create that whole number into a fraction by putting a 1 underneath. Step 2, this is the reciprocal. This is where you actually go ahead and put 1 on top and 5 on the bottom. So I went ahead and just put that 5 as the new denominator and 1 as the numerator. Okay, so 1, make that whole number a fraction. Step 2, create the right reciprocal. We can then multiply for step 3. Finally, after we get an answer and we've multiplied, we have to go ahead and simplify our answer. Make sure that it's in simplest form. And of course, is it reasonable? Check and see if it all makes sense. 1, create that fraction. 2, right reciprocal. 3, multiply. Make sure it's in simplest form. And does your answer make sense? Is it reasonable? Let's see what it looks like with actual math problems. Math in My World, a sports website, has score updates every 1/4 of an hour. How many times does the website have score updates in 3-hour period? Well, I'm going to take that number 3 and I'm dividing it by 1/4 to try to figure out the answer to this question. Well, I know step 1. Step 1 is to create a fraction. I'm going to change this 3 into a fraction by putting it over 1. Step 2 is that right reciprocal. The fraction on the right is 1/4. I'm going to go ahead and do the reciprocal. I'm going to put the 4 on the top as the numerator, and the 1 becomes the denominator. Step 1, create a fraction. Done. Step 2, write reciprocal. Step 3, go ahead and multiply. 3 times 4 is 12. 1 times 1 is 1. Okay, I've multiplied, so step 1, make that whole number a fraction, check. Step 2, write reciprocal, check. Step 3, multiply. I'm done with that. Now I'm going to go ahead and simplify the fraction that I have. 12 over 1 can really be written as a whole number 12. We know that once you put 12 over 1, then you're creating a fraction. But its equivalent partner, or how you write it in an equivalent way, is to take away that 1, and it becomes the whole number of 12. Okay, so simplified my fraction. Now I got to see if it's reasonable. How many times does the website have score updates in a 3-hour period? Well, the answer is 12. I think it's reasonable because when I divide 3 as a whole number into 1/4, then I get 12. I can multiply to check. If there's 4 in every hour, let's see, 4 times 3 is 12. So it makes sense that 1/4 of the total period of time would be 12. I can go ahead and move on. I have the right answer. All right, Bobcats. Example 2, Lisa takes 4 apple pies. Apple pie is my personal favorite. To her family reunion. Each pie is cut into sixths. How many pieces of pie can Lisa serve? I need to find the unknown, which is G. Well, how many pie pieces can she serve? Well, step 1, go ahead and change that whole number into a fraction by putting it over 1. Step 2 is I need to take the fraction on the right and do the reciprocal. The reciprocal is where the 6 becomes the number on top and the 1 becomes the denominator. Step 3, go ahead and change it to multiply and times. 6 times 4 is 24. 1 times 1 is 1. So step 1, I created that whole number into a fraction. Check. Step 2, I did the right reciprocal. Step 3, I multiplied or times. Now I need to simplify. Can I simplify this fraction? Another way to write 24 over 1 is to go ahead and take away the 1 and make it a whole number. Let's see if it's reasonable. I think the pieces of pie that Lisa can serve are 24 pieces of pie. If I multiply 6 times 4, I do get 24. So I know I have the right answer. It's reasonable. All right, we're moving into that guided practice. Find the quotient. Remember, quotient is the answer to a division problem. Find the quotient of 2 1/3. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and take 2 and put it over 1 to make it a fraction. I'm going to do the right reciprocal. So 3 goes on top now and 1 goes as the denominator. Step 3, change it to times, multiply. Go ahead and solve. 2 times 3 is 6. 1 times 1 is 1. I can go ahead and do step 4, simplify my answer. Well, I concluded the answer is 6. I know that my answer is reasonable because 3 times 2 is 6. It makes sense. I can move on. All right, find each quotient. 4 divided by 1/3 equals. Well, step 1, put it over 1 so it is created a fraction. Do the right reciprocal of the right fraction, right? Then I'm going to change it to multiplication, and I can multiply. 4 times 3 is 12. 1 times 1 is 1. Now I can go ahead and simplify. I can rewrite my answer so that I have a whole number. What is 1/3 of 4? Well, that's 12. 3 times 4 is 12, so it makes sense. If I look at problem number 3, step 1, make that whole number a fraction. Change the right fraction into its reciprocal by putting the 5 on top and the 1 on the bottom. Step 3, we can multiply. 3 times 5 is 15, and I have 1 as the denominator. I can simplify this fraction so it's no longer over 1. Instead, I'm going to make it a whole number. And 1/5 of 3 is 15. 3 times 5 is 15, so I know I have determined the right answer. It's reasonable. Moving into that independent practice, let's go ahead and try number 6. Find each quotient. Following those same steps, create a fraction by putting the whole number over 1. Take the fraction on the right and do the reciprocal. The 2 is now on top and the 1 is now the denominator. Go ahead and switch it to multiplication and times. 2 times 2 is 4. 1 times 1 is 1. Go ahead and rewrite your fraction, your answer, and simplify. Simplest form. What is 1/2 of 2? Well, 1/2 would be 4. So I know I have the right answer. Let's look at number 7. I'm going to go ahead and start with step 1. Change that whole number into a fraction by putting it over 1. Take the fraction on the right and do the reciprocal. So 6 is on top and 1 is the denominator. Change it to multiplication, times. What is 6 times 3? Well, that's 18, and 1 times 1 is 1. Can I rewrite it in simplest form? Absolutely. 18 over 1 is equivalent or equal to 18. So I know that I have the right answer because if I check through multiplication, 6 times 3 is 18. It is correct. I can move on. All right, let's go ahead and try some problem solving. Denise has 4 hours to paint crafts. She would like to spend no more than 1/4 of each hour on each craft. How many crafts can she paint during that time? Well, the first thing I need to do is set up the problem. I have 4 hours, and she's going to be painting 1/4 of each of those hours. Let's try to figure out how many crafts she can paint. Well, step 1, we're going to go ahead and make that whole number turn into a fraction by putting it over 1. And then step 2, we're going to change the right fraction so it's the reciprocal. 4 becomes the numerator, 1 becomes the denominator. Step 3 is to times or multiply. Now I can go ahead and solve. 4 times 4 is 16. 1 times 1 is 1. So the step that I have to do next is to go ahead and simplify that fraction. I don't want to have it over 1. I'm going to rewrite it so it's equivalent, and I'm going to use just the whole number. I understand the answer to be 16 crafts. I know my answer is reasonable because if I check through multiplication, 4 times 4 is 16. I know I have the right answer. All right, number 9. Laura has a 6-foot long piece of ribbon that she wants to cut to make bows. Each piece needs to be 1/3 of a foot long to make one bow. How many bows will she be able to make? Well, she has 6 feet, right? And she's going to be dividing that by 1/3 to see how many she can make. Well, step 1, go ahead and make that whole number a fraction. Step 2, let's do the reciprocal of the fraction on the right. Step 3, let's go ahead and change it to multiplication. And now we can go ahead and times. 6 times 3 is 18. 1 times 1 is 1. Can I write it in simplest form? Absolutely. 18 over 1 is also equivalent to 18. So I established the answer is 18 bows can be made. Is my answer reasonable? Yes, because if I check through multiplication, 6 times 3 is 18. All right, Bobcats, what did you learn today? Well, in summary, today I learned that you can sometimes use multiplication to help you with division. I also learned that you don't always divide a whole number by a whole number. Sometimes you're going to have to divide a whole number by a fraction, and hopefully the steps and tools you learned today will help you solve that problem. Thank you so much for your attention. Have a wonderful day.